My name is Jesse, and I work with small businesses in the government marketplace. You're listening to FedBiz'5, where you get informed, get connected, and get results on everything government contracting. Hello, and welcome to another episode of FedBiz'5. Today we have Scott Dawson with Core Business Solutions, and he's here to talk about Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, aka CMMC, and how it applies to you. Welcome, Scott.
Well, thank you, Jesse. Glad to be here.
Happy to have you. So let's just jump right in. What is CMMC and who does it apply to?
Yeah, great question. CMMC is a cybersecurity requirement that is coming down through the Department of Defense, and it will ultimately affect all suppliers throughout all the tiers in the supply chain for DoD contracts, from the primes through subs. Anywhere that information is being exchanged or contracts are being in place that's to support a defense contract, it will apply to those organizations. So companies will have to implement necessary cybersecurity protections, and then there will be an assessment, a little bit like an ISO audit, if people are familiar with that. And then once a company passes the assessment, the certificate is then issued. So that would then put them in compliance with CMMC.
Okay, great. So it's really just revolving around DoD. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a DoD requirement. Has not yet hit contracts, but currently companies should be watching the terms in their contracts to see when this is going to be applicable.
Okay, great. So I appreciate that explanation. So what does it require, and what should companies be doing now?
Yeah, great question. So the requirements for CMMC come out of a NIST standard called NIST SP 800-171, and that is a list of cybersecurity protections. There are 120 of them. They're called practices, and companies can begin becoming familiarized with those requirements. They should probably go through and do a self-assessment to see where they stand, whether or not they have some of the requirements already in place or not, and then start working through preparing. One other thing to note is that as of the end of 2020, I believe, there was a preliminary requirement for companies to do a self-assessment, determine a score of their assessment, and submit that to the Department of Defense in a database called SPURS, which is the Supplier Performance Risk System. That's the system that keeps track of all suppliers' performance, past performance in contracts and quality scores. And there's now a cybersecurity score requirement. So if a company has not submitted their score, even today, they're not eligible for defense contract.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate all that extra information. So my last question is, when will it become effective?
Yeah, that is the process that they're working through right now is called rulemaking. So that's the government speak for creating regulations. And that rulemaking process, which is basically finalizing and getting approvals, should conclude by March of 2023. And then the requirement will start to appear in contracts in May of 2023. At least that's the current announced schedule. They've missed the schedule a few times, so I wouldn't be surprised. But once they start to implement through various contracts, it will take years for it to go through all defense contracts. There are around 300,000 companies that do work with the Department of Defense in the U.S.
And that's just with the DoD, too.
That's just with the DoD, and they will all have to get certified eventually. So there's no way it could all happen at the same time. So it will be phased in over a period of years.
Scott, thank you so much for explaining this. And I believe our listeners, they definitely got something out of this. Well, one more question. I know I said that was the last one, but do you have any advice to give now for people that may be interested in trying to get involved into this?
Well, yeah, I think it's important that companies get training in the requirements. Most small businesses don't have a depth of IT resources or cybersecurity experts at their disposal. And oftentimes reaching out to a firm like Core Business Solutions that can assist with doing assessments and helping with preparation can really make all the difference.
Well, thank you so much for that once again. And I appreciate you taking the time and coming on to help us understand this a little bit more.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Appreciate it.
You got it. Take care. This concludes this week's episode of FedBiz'5, where you get informed, get connected, and get results. Today's podcast is sponsored by FedBiz Access, government contracting made simple. Visit them at fedbizaccess.com or contact them at 888-299-4498.